Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Draw Control Podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by sophomore on the Loyola women's lacrosse team, Olivia Blanding. Last season, in 8 games, Olivia had 2 goals, 3 assists, 2 ground balls, and 1 caused turnover. Before college, Olivia was named first team All League, first team All-CNY, team most valuable player, and finalist for Player of the Year during her senior season. Olivia also has a podcast that you can follow called Sissy Talk Podcast, and we're excited to talk to her about that later in the episode. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Olivia, and how is everything going?
It's going great. Everything is awesome here at Loyola, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, how has the off season been going for yourself so far? Obviously, we're nearing the end of the off season, but have you been doing anything interesting, whether it's on or off the field?
Nothing too interesting right now. I mean, just focusing on academics and obviously wrapping up fall ball and going on winter break soon. Just staying involved with my family and friends, and that's about it right now.
Yeah, for sure. So concluding fall ball, how do you think your team did this fall and you yourself, like how do you think your performance and everything went?
Yeah, so we had three different play days this year. We started out versus JMU, Colorado, and St. Joseph's University. That was a good gauge on just our first time playing against someone other than ourselves, except our alumni game. And our game keys were just kind of being patient on offense, having a high shooting percentage, and on defense, kind of being more composed, especially since there are a lot more green cards now in between the 30s, and just not really fouling too much. We played pretty good that day, and then following that, we played Delaware, and actually in the previous play day when we played JMU, it was a tough fight, and we did lose. So going into the Delaware game, our coach really put an emphasis on coming out strong and just another emphasis on our game keys from the last game. Played strong, came out with a win that game. And then the next weekend, we played Maryland, Richmond, and Penn, which was really good competition. And we went into these games with just a super positive mindset and winning mindset. And that's exactly what we got out of those games. I mean, um, this last season, we did have two unfortunate losses to Penn, and one of them being our season ending game. And everyone knows that they're a great team, so we just wanted to go out there and prove that we can compete with them, and that's exactly what we did. So I'm super happy with how fall ball did go.
Yeah. And obviously, as a sophomore, heading into the season, you sort of know what to expect a little bit now, with that year under your belt. So, what are some things you've been working on this summer and in fall ball to get ready for next season?
I feel like I've been working on the obvious stuff like strength and conditioning, but I've especially been working on my mindset and just finding ways to push myself more than I have in the past. And this fall, we have been putting a big emphasis on conditioning, and obviously, that's a lot of stress on the body and the mind. If you don't kind of go into it with a good mindset, you will not get a good output. And so I've just kind of been working on running with a good mindset, doing one more rep, whether that's in the weight room or on the field and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just curious how you work on your mindset because I feel like that's such an important part of lacrosse, is having a good mental mindset. And I know for different players, it's sort of they work on it differently. So I'm just
Mhm.
curious how you work on it specifically and like what works for you and some of the stuff you do to make yourself have a positive mindset heading into each game. Because as you know, a season's like a roller coaster. There's a lot of ups and downs throughout one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been prioritizing my mindset and my mental health by seeing a sports psychologist, which has been super different and awesome because they focus obviously more on the sports side of it. And I've kind of that's been specifically what I've been working on with her is I told her I was like, "Hey, I don't really like running that much. How can I improve this?" And that's a hard thing to deal with on your own, and that's what a lot of athletes will tell you. And they seek outside sources to kind of help them break through that hump. And so that's just what I've been working on lately, and it's been awesome. I totally recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. So starting from the beginning, so you're from New York. So describe like growing up there. It's obviously like a big hotbed. So when did you start playing lacrosse? How?
Yeah, so I am originally from like Camillus specifically, but if I were to tell anyone like outside of New York, I'd say Syracuse. And when you say Syracuse, you think of kind of this powerhouse for lacrosse. And being from upstate New York, where lacrosse is so respected, we're kind of like known for birthing these great athletes and great lacrosse players. And when you think about like Kayla Trainer, Taylor Gate, Riley Donahue, those are the players that I idolized growing up. And just like, I definitely started playing lacrosse because of my dad. And I just ended up falling in love with it.
So you kind of mentioned this, but did you have any favorite lacrosse players or teams that you like to watch? I know being from the Syracuse area, I'm sure that's like definitely a team you grew up watching.
Yeah. I mean, growing up so close to the Dome, I was always watching the Syracuse team, and that's when Kayla Trainer was kind of at her prime. And I just loved how shifty she was, and she had these insane stick skills. She would throw behind the backs and Twizzlers, and it was insane to watch as a kid, especially like in real life in front of your eyes. And it truly inspired like the way I play today, for sure.
Now, your father, Jim, also played lacrosse with Loyola and held the program record in goals and assists and is also a member of the Loyola Hall of Fame. So I'm just want to ask you, like, what has he meant for you during your lacrosse career, just being your dad? And did you learn anything from him lacrosse wise? And is it kind of cool getting to like continue his legacy with Loyola now?
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, he means everything when it comes to lacrosse, and we both share this obviously intense love of the game. So that has made us bond over these years. Um, he's taught me everything I know. I mean, he is my biggest inspiration, and he went to my high school. We wore the same number. At college, I'm wearing the same number. So every time I step onto the field, it's just a reminder of kind of the legacy that I brought on and the new journey that I'm beginning. And I feel like I was lucky enough to grow up with a dad that played lacrosse. A lot of people don't have that growing up. And as a kid, me and my dad, we would just go outside and play catch with me and my siblings who also play lacrosse. And it was always like my favorite part of the day. But all in all, everything I do on the field is I've learned it because of him.
Was it kind of a no-brainer to go to Loyola because of your dad, or what? Or were you looking like other options?
Yeah. So Loyola was always number one on my list. I told my coach that when I was going through the recruiting process. I mean, I loved everything about it. When I talk to my teammates now, they said before the recruiting process they didn't know anything about Loyola, but then they reached out and they wanted to go there. But it's kind of the opposite for me. I mean, I grew up going to the games and I knew what Loyola was from the start, and being able to go there was my dream. So when they had reached out, it was just kind of a no-brainer. Just this great school academically, small, that's what I wanted, and great lacrosse, great coaches, great people. I was like, that's all I want.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of describe your high school experience and what you took away from that you brought into Loyola.
Yeah. So in my 3 years playing varsity at West Jenny, I would say I went into each year a little hungrier than I was the year before. My sophomore year, we lost in sectional quarterfinals in Class A. My junior year, we dropped down to Class B and made it to the sectional finals game and lost to Fayetteville Manlius, which was the team that Ava Angelo from Hopkins played on. So we were kind of butting heads in that game, still are, Loyola and Hopkins. But after that game, I wanted to win a sectional final so bad. And it being my senior year and the fact that I was a captain on the team, I felt like I was in the role to do that. And my senior year, we won sectionals, regionals, and made it to state semifinals. And I was so proud of that group of girls. And I wouldn't have changed that experience for the world. So I'm super thankful for my high school experience. And yeah.
Have you
What would
met
you
Ava?
say? Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Have you met Ava? She's like really nice. It must be a
Yes.
nice rivalry to have. I'm just curious if you
Yes.
like know her off the field.
I do. So we actually played on the same club team. So
Okay.
I've been close with her like forever. And I tell my friends this now when we went into the Hopkins game last year. I was like, guys, I wish I couldn't like her because like she's this great person on our rival team, but she is the nicest person ever. And I love her so much.
That's awesome. So kind of talk about like adjustments that you made as a freshman going in. You know, Loyola is like such a competitive school and a program. So what did you have to do to kind of adjust to that level?
Yeah. So adjusting to the style of play was hard at first, but I would say the biggest change coming out of high school was the physicality and the speed of play. And so there are more cross checks, more poke checks in college compared to high school,
Yeah,
a
for
lot more
sure.
bruises on your arms, but kind of just focusing on like not dodging with your hands more out in front of you and kind of going in with your shoulder a little bit more, taking that contact is was my way of adjusting to college lacrosse.
No, you get to play in the Patriot League, which is one of my favorite conferences in all of college lacrosse, just because there's a lot of underrated teams like yourself, Navy, Army, BU, Holy Cross, just to name a few. So, what's it like being a player playing in that conference and just the competition that you guys face each game?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like the Patriot League is definitely underrated with these smaller schools compared to the ACC and the Big Ten. But I think for Loyola individually, keeping up with those out of conference games, is truly a testament to how good we really are and that we can keep up with these higher end teams.
So how did you learn, Loyola not only being such a top program in lacrosse, but a very high academic school? Like, how did you learn how to balance academics and athletics?
I can't lie, it was a little hard at first, but that is because everything's so new.
Mhm.
And that's why I told my parents. I was like, you're kind of thrown to the school without your family, without your friends from high school, and you're living in the storm. Everything's so different. But I feel like I was just kind of overwhelmed at first with the amount of work and the limited amount of time to do it. But I feel like after a few months, you definitely start getting in the swing of things and improving your time management skills.
Now, let's talk about your freshman year and just the performance that your team had. So, you scored your first collegiate goal in your first game you ever played in against American University. Talk about that goal, sort of what it meant to you, and did you get to keep the ball afterwards as well?
That goal actually meant a lot more to me than people may think. It was a result of lots of years of hard work and years of dreaming to be in that very position that I was in. And when my teammates came to cheer for me, I got so emotional in a good way. A lot of my teammates, I'm like known as just a happy crier. So I just started crying because I was just so thankful for the opportunity to play for this team. And the feeling of excitement after the goal literally cannot be compared to. And sadly, I did not get to keep the ball, but that memory, like nothing can beat it.
Now, obviously, your team won another Patriot League championship. I just want to ask you, what did this one mean to you, though, as a freshman, being your first one that you've won with them, and what emotions were you going through after Georgia scored that overtime winner? Because it was must have been crazy. Because at first it looked like the goalie made the save, and then she somehow batted it back into the net. So it must have been like, huh, ah, type of
Yes.
reaction, I would imagine.
Yeah, it totally was. I mean, coming into Loyola, you kind of know that the standard has been winning Patriot League championships these past few years. And going into that day, I thought it was just going to be another easy ride to a Patriot League championship. But obviously, Navy is a really strong team, and you can tell that they wanted it really bad. But I just knew going into it that there was no doubt in my mind that, like, because of the players that were on the field, I had full trust in them to do everything they could to get the ball in the back of the net. And it was kind of just another day for Georgia getting that sweeping dodge and that rip into the goal. So yeah, I mean that at that moment I felt so much joy and it definitely was like scary because like we didn't know if it went in and then you see Georgia running around out there and we didn't even wait for the refs to check the stick. We just ran out there, which after the fact we were all talking about it and we were like, wait, is that legal? But yeah, we were just like overjoyed and it definitely has been a top memory since being here.
Yeah, one of my favorite lacrosse stories I've ever heard was someone was freaking out when the players ran on the field after like an overtime goal because they thought they would get like a red card or something, and like it
Yeah.
just was a kind of a funny story. But it must be so cool to play with players like Georgia and Chase Boyle. Like, what have you learned from them? Like, especially as a freshman.
Being a freshman last year, there was a lot to learn from them. I mean, not only are they great lacrosse players, but they're great people. I mean, I live with them. I get to talk to them all the time and I know off the field how they are. And them being such different players, but both so good just shows the dynamic way of lacrosse and how different players can be so good and they work so well together. And I was so proud of Chase this past year, getting so far and almost winning the Tewaaraton. And for Georgia to rack up those points last year, I'm so happy for them. And I know that they're going to do amazing things this year.
Now, in the tournament, you guys played a really good Duke team that I felt like should have been in the national tournament. I know there was a lot of discussion online whether they should have been in or not, but I feel like they should have been. They're a really good team. Talk about that first tournament victory that you had, though, and what makes Duke such a good lacrosse team from your perspective playing against them in that moment.
I mean, historically, Duke has always been a top tier program, bringing in a lot of top recruits from different club programs and around the world. Given that we've never really played them in our normal seasons, we didn't really have a good gauge on how they would play against our team specifically. But they had Katie DeSimone, who is a phenomenal player with great lacrosse IQ and shot placement. I mean, she had 5 goals in that game. And when she got hot, everyone else followed her. And I feel like it was easier to stop their plays as Katie was bringing in all the shots and she had a huge role in their success this season. So I feel like getting to play Duke for the first time was definitely a cool experience and so much respect for their players and for that program. It was truly amazing.
Yeah, Louisville plays Duke. We're both in the ACC, and it's definitely a battle every single year. So I definitely do agree with that. Like they always bring something new to the table, which respect to them for sure.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned your season last year came to a close with a loss against UPenn, and that was so what was your first tournament experience like, and how have you and your team reflected on that loss?
My first tournament experience was amazing. Our team brought great energy and everyone was super positive. And obviously, it would have been great to make it a little further, but I feel like I was thankful to even get the chance to be in the tournament and get to the second round. And reflecting on the loss, like I said before, we got the opportunity to play them this fall, and that was huge. And we were able to make those adjustments that maybe we couldn't have made the year before. And coming off of that loss, our coaches have been preparing us early and being able to compete at that tournament level of play. And I feel like Loyola has a lot to bring to the table this year. So I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think has been your biggest improvement to your game since freshman year?
Definitely being more dynamic. We have one of the best coaching staffs in the nation who bring a wide variety of skills. And we have Dana, who loves her behind the backs and her stick skills, and our other coaches who really encourage unique play, I guess you could say. So being dynamic, making those small changes that could amount to bigger ones. For example, like I said before, kind of dodging with your hands not so out in front of you because I know our defense will like poke check you and take the ball out of your stick. So, um, and dodging earlier than you would think because in high school you don't have those poke checks. So dodging a little earlier, being able to outrun your defender has definitely been what you should do.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think are your team goals and expectations this year?
We have had smaller expectations this fall, kind of just beating some of the higher level teams and getting a gauge on how we all play together as a team. But leading into the season, we definitely have set high expectations for ourselves, and we're eager to play some new teams this year, including Boston College, who just won the national championship. That'll be our first game right out the gate. So
Wow.
we come out strong. I know.
What a first game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first games for sure.
Oh yeah. So we've definitely been preparing ourselves well to go into that game and play this really strong unit. And we have trust that we will make it this far. And my coach believes that if we all work individually during winter break, we can all come back together and we can come back better than when we came in from the summer.
Now, I did want to ask you about your podcast, obviously, because I'm a big podcast guy. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious why you started one and what it's about and like where our audience could find it, because I think it's pretty cool when athletes start their own and sort of talk about their experience. Because I always love sort of the behind the scenes of everyone sees a lacrosse player on the field, but they sometimes don't see what it's like off the field. So I always like sort of that sneak peek behind the scene kind of stuff. So I was curious about what it's about and like just how you started and all that.
Yeah. I mean, coming into that this past summer, I kind of had this weird unexplainable urge that I was kind of brought here to help people, and I took that thought and that opportunity and kind of made the spontaneous decision to start my podcast. And something that has always been super important to me is mental health, because things aren't always going to be great all the time, and that's okay. It's taken me a long time, lots of confusion, lots of sadness to discover kind of that it is okay to feel these feelings and internalize them, but it is about how we heal from them and move forward. That's so important. Um, and I feel like if I would have had someone a few years ago who I respected a lot come forward and talk about their experiences with mental health, I would have felt a little less alone, um, and heard. And that's exactly what I want to do for everyone else. I now have 5 episodes out on Spotify. And like you said before, my podcast is called Sissy Talk Podcast. And I really encourage it for anyone who's interested in hearing about a multitude of things. I mean, I've recorded episodes with amazing people in my life about dyslexia, alopecia, injuries, etc. Just, but I would love to target a larger audience if anyone's interested in listening.
Yeah, go listen to it if you're listening to this podcast. That sounds awesome. I saw the preview episode, so I'll try to listen to one full episode sometime this week when I'm driving somewhere or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's such a good platform too. A podcast is so easy to, put your name out there. And I do think that's such a good way for especially what you're putting out there. It's like no one really talks about it, especially as, a D1 athlete or an athlete in general. So I really like the fact that you're doing that. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Now let's move on to a segment that we like to call the non-lacrosse segment, where I ask you some non-lacrosse questions to get to know you more off the field, and we'll answer some of these as well to make it a fun conversation. So now, what's been the most interesting thing you've read or seen recently?
Definitely the Women's Lacrosse League launching this past week. It's kind of like made me emotional seeing it, and seeing that we're making huge steps in the right direction for women's sports. It's so exciting to see the game growing and for more women to become involved in this amazing sport.
Yeah, I'm a big Bruins fan, so they just fired their coach. So that's been what everyone has been talking about in my friend group. So that's been the most interesting thing for me.
I would have to say the WLL. Like it's such a good, the first it came with the Olympics and now it's the WLL. So I do think that's such a good first step in the right direction to kind of send women's lacrosse in the right direction. So I saw in your bio that your parents played multiple sports. So if you didn't play lacrosse, which sport would you play?
I would definitely play hockey. My dad grew up playing hockey and my brother plays it. My dog's name is Bauer because of the hockey brand, and it's a huge thing in my town. And I begged my parents to let me play growing up, and they never let me just because too physical and I would get hurt probably. But I love the physicality and like speed of the play, and um I just love the energy, and it is a great sport to watch.
That would be mine as well. So I'm a big
Yeah, you're
hockey
talking
guy as
to,
well.
yeah, you're talking to a big hockey guy right here.
Yeah, I used to
Face
play,
light up.
so
I don't know what sport I played everything growing up, so I would have to see whichever one I'm best at because I'm stubborn. But yeah,
now who has the best off the field style on the Loyola women's lacrosse team?
I would have to say this year, Lauren Lamb, she transferred in from Hofstra, and you will literally never catch her lacking in a bad outfit. But also from last year, Sydney Black, you probably something you wouldn't expect, but she has the best style. And you also can't catch her lacking in a bad outfit as well.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite lacrosse clips was when she's like, "You can't guard me," after like scoring
Oh my
this
That was
unreal goal.
awesome.
I don't know if you saw that one, Abby, but that was awesome.
Yeah, that was so funny to watch.
I think Riley and Logan would be upset at me if I didn't say they had the best style on the team, so I'll go with them.
What is one show that you can binge watch all day?
Honestly, my guilty confession is that I could watch Love Island all day. I feel like I just become so like involved and like obsessed with these people's lives that it's kind of hard to turn off the show. So I'd have to say Love Island.
I don't know, for me, probably like Parks and Recreation. It's like a good background TV show that I like to watch, so I'll go with that. Or Modern Family, one of those two.
Mine would probably be either Gossip Girl or Vampire Diaries, something like a long season where I could just put it on and know exactly what's happening because I've seen it so many times.
All right, so let's get back to some lacrosse questions now. I guess we sort of talked about it a little bit, but what should be done to help grow women's lacrosse from your perspective?
I mean, obviously, the WLL is a big leap in the right direction, but I also think that um, making lacrosse accessible to lower income communities and people around the world in order to kind of diversify and create a new love for the game would be super beneficial. And I know how much I love lacrosse and how much of an impact it's had on me growing up. And um, being able to turn to it when times are tough. I want other people, no matter who they are, to be able to experience what I got to experience as well.
What advice do you have for younger girls that want to play in college or are aspiring to be that person?
I would just say to never give up. You don't need to be the top in your class to make a name for yourself. I mean, me personally, I got cut from the Under Armour team my freshman year of high school. But I worked hard to make it where I am today. I also wasn't an All-American in high school like a lot of other players were coming into Loyola and even those other top name schools. But I mean, I'm still here, and if you work hard, you obviously can accomplish a lot of things.
Now, last question we have for you is, do you have any shout outs you want to give, and who should we have on the podcast next?
I don't know if I have any shout outs. I mean, Uh, maybe my sister, she's a senior, Ashley Blanding at West Tennessee, and she's going to Niagara next year, so super happy about that.
Nice.
I think someone who should be on the podcast next is a close friend of mine that I played club with for a very long time. Her name's Catherine Morsey. She has an incredible story that I think a lot of people should hear. Her senior year of high school, she literally broke both of her shins, and now she's having a huge impact at Notre Dame on their women's lacrosse team. And I just think she's so inspirational, and um, she's had the greatest recovery. So I think she would be great.
Awesome. We'll definitely reach out and see if she wants to come on. But Olivia, I just want to say for me, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It really means a lot to us. I think you're an amazing player, but also a great person as well. And I'm excited to see what you accomplish next season, but also wishing you all the best with the podcast as well. And like I said before, anyone who's listening to this, please check it out. It would mean a lot to us. So, but this was such a fun interview. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on, Liv. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Liv. Wish you all the best of luck this season and especially with your podcast. It's really, really cool to see what you're doing.
Thank you.